The first sign something was wrong should have been Uncle Daniel's house. Daniel had spent most of his adult life one missed paycheck away from panic. He and Aunt Melissa still lived in the same cramped two-bedroom they had bought when their son was a toddler. 6 months earlier, Melissa had called me crying because Daniel needed a cardiac procedure and their savings would barely cover the deductible. Then, out of nowhere, they bought a gated house with 5 bedrooms, a pool, and a 3-car garage. They invited me to the housewarming. I never made it. A delivery truck ran a red light and hit the driver's side of my car hard enough to fold the frame around me. I survived, technically. My legs did not. While I was still learning how to transfer myself from a hospital bed into a wheelchair, Aunt Claire announced that she had won a multi-million-dollar lottery jackpot. She cried when she told me. She said our family's luck had finally turned. Then she offered to pay for the best prosthetics and rehabilitation money could buy. Before the custom equipment was even finished, a scan found an aggressive cancer. I remember staring at the oncologist's mouth and thinking there had to be some mistake. I was 28. I had been healthy before the crash. I had spent months believing losing my legs was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. By then, my oldest uncle, Robert, had started talking about a massive contract his company was about to land. Everyone around me seemed to be getting richer while my body was being dismantled piece by piece. The thought came too late. Something about it wasn't random. I never got the chance to figure out what. One afternoon, as I rolled beneath the balcony of my apartment building, a ceramic planter fell from 6 stories above. There was a sharp crack. Then nothing. On the day I died, Robert's company announced the biggest contract in its history. I learned that part only because death, apparently, was not as quiet as I expected. I don't know how long I floated in that strange gray place. I had no body. No pain. No sense of direction. Then, through the fog, I heard a voice. Life traded for money. Think. What did they give you? Burn it if you want to live. The voice was so faint I could have mistaken it for memory. Then I opened my eyes. I was standing in my old apartment. Both legs were under me. My hands were whole. My phone lay on the dresser, showing a date almost a year before my death. The day before Daniel bought the house. For several seconds I did nothing but stare at my own feet. Then I ran. I yanked open the top drawer of my dresser so hard it came off the track. At the back, beneath old tax documents and a scarf, sat a tiny red envelope. Inside was a folded paper charm threaded on a cord. My uncles and Aunt Claire had given it to me for my birthday 1 month earlier. They had made an entire ceremony out of it. They said they had climbed hundreds of stone steps to a retreat in the hills and brought the charm back for me because they wanted me to have a protected life and good fortune. At the time, I had been touched. My parents had died when I was young. Robert, Daniel, and Claire had taken turns raising me. I had slept in their spare rooms, spent holidays at their tables, and learned to call all 3 of their houses home. That little folded charm had felt like proof that I belonged to them. Now my fingers shook so badly I almost dropped it. I carried it to the kitchen sink, set it in a metal bowl, and lit one corner. The paper curled black. The red thread shrank. Within seconds, everything my family had supposedly climbed a mountain to give me became ash. I stared at the smoke and waited for the world to change. My phone rang. Daniel. My stomach dropped. I answered. Mia! He boomed. His voice sounded exactly as it had in my first life. Guess what? We closed on the new place. You're coming over tonight. Robert and Claire are already here. The room tilted. What new place? He laughed. The house I told you about. I'll send the address. Don't make other plans. I looked at the ash in my sink. In my first life, Daniel had paid nearly $2 million for that house. He had told me he emptied his retirement account, scraped together the down payment, and borrowed the rest. I had even called the brokerage because I thought he was being scammed. The sale had been real. But how? The charm was gone. If the charm had been the thing trading my life for their wealth, why was the house still there? Mia? I'm not feeling well, I said quickly. I can't come tonight. A pause. Daniel's voice lost its brightness. It's Saturday. I know. You told me your office is closed Saturdays. My hand tightened around the phone. Daniel had never interrogated me like that before. I have something else to do. All right, he said. Relief barely had time to reach me. Then he added, I'll pick you up. No, you don't have to. The call ended. I stared at the screen. 20 minutes later, someone knocked. Daniel lived across town. There was no way he had driven from the new house that quickly. Unless he had already been nearby. The thought left a cold line down my spine. I opened the door only halfway. Daniel stood in the hall smiling, keys hooked around one finger. There she is. I told you I'm not feeling well. Then family dinner will cheer you up. Before I could argue, he stepped forward, took my elbow, and steered me toward the elevator with the easy authority of someone who had spent years believing he had the right to make decisions for me. In my first life, I would have let him. This time, every step toward his car felt like I was walking toward the truck that had crushed my legs. I buckled my seatbelt. Then I checked it twice. Daniel glanced over. What's gotten into you? Nothing. You look like I kidnapped you. The joke landed so badly that I almost laughed. He drove carefully. No speeding. No risky turns. Every approaching truck made my lungs seize, but we reached the gated development without incident. When Daniel pulled into the driveway, my hands were damp with sweat. He shook his head, amused. You really don't trust my driving today. I opened the passenger door. My shoe had barely touched the pavement when something moved in my peripheral vision. A compact car shot backward out of the neighboring driveway. I froze. Daniel grabbed the back of my jacket and hauled me against him. The car missed me by less than 2 feet and slammed into a retaining wall. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Then Daniel swore and pulled me farther from the street. What is wrong with people? He shouted at the driver. His arm stayed around my shoulders. His face was pale. You okay? I could only stare at him. He had just saved me. If he wanted me dead, why save me? The answer should have comforted me. Instead, it made everything worse. Maybe the strange voice had been nothing. Maybe my first life had been a chain of horrifying coincidences. Maybe I was turning the people who raised me into monsters because dying had broken something inside my head. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. Mia? I'm fine. He led me inside. Before we reached the kitchen, Claire screamed. I won. The sound stopped me cold. Robert laughed from somewhere near the dining room. Claire came running around the corner with her phone in both hands, eyes wet and cheeks flushed. $5 million, she said. $5 million. Exactly like before. My heartbeat became a roar. Claire noticed my face. Oh my God, honey. What's wrong? Robert looked up too. Daniel's son, Aaron, leaned back in his chair and snorted. Probably jealous. Robert's daughter, Sophie, laughed under her breath. Of course she is. Dad's business is finally taking off, Uncle Daniel gets a new house, Aunt Claire gets rich, and Mia walks in looking like she's at a funeral. Robert slapped the back of Aaron's head. Daniel did the same to Sophie. Apologize, Robert said. Aaron's expression darkened. Claire wrapped an arm around me. Don't listen to them. You're our girl. Always have been. My eyes burned. That was the problem. They had been good to me. When my parents died, I was 7. Robert taught me to ride a bike. Daniel sat beside my hospital bed when I had pneumonia. Claire learned how to braid hair because I cried the first time she tried to send me to school with a crooked ponytail. They had never let me feel like an orphan. How was I supposed to reconcile those memories with the fact that my death had made all of them richer? I stayed through dinner. I watched. I listened. Nobody said anything openly suspicious. The next morning, I booked the most comprehensive medical screening I could find. Blood work. Imaging. Cardiac tests. Everything. The physician looked at me like I was being excessively cautious, but she ordered enough to reassure me. 2 days later, she called. You're healthy, Mia. Completely? As much as anyone can say from these tests. Nothing here suggests cancer, neurological disease, or any urgent condition. I sat in my car outside the clinic and cried with relief. No cancer. No paralysis. No curse. At least, that was what I told myself. Then I saw the young woman by the elevator. Her right arm was in a cast. She held a stack of medical paperwork in her left hand. Her eyes were red from crying. And around her neck hung a red cord. At the end was a folded paper charm identical to the one I had burned. My entire body went cold. I followed her before I could talk myself out of it. Excuse me. She turned. Up close, she looked younger than I had first thought. Maybe 24. Are you okay? I asked. She gave a tired laugh. That depends on your definition. I handed her a tissue. I'm Mia. Nora. Her name was Nora Reed. I didn't tell her about dying. I asked about the cast. She had fallen down a staircase. I asked about the paperwork. She hesitated. Then one sheet shifted, exposing a diagnosis. Cancer. Not suspected. Confirmed. My mouth went dry. The charm rested against her collarbone. Where did you get that? Her hand closed around it. My parents. When? A few months ago. What happened after? She frowned. What do you mean? I sat beside her. Please. I know this is going to sound insane. Just answer me. Maybe something in my face convinced her. She stared at the floor. My dad's business had been drowning. Then suddenly he paid off everything. Bought a sports car. They moved into a new house. My brother got sent to an expensive school overseas. And you? Her laugh cracked. I fell down the stairs. Then I got sick. So I guess the family luck skipped me. I could barely breathe. I told her about my relative's sudden money. About my own charm. About burning it. I left out the rebirth. I wasn't ready to sound completely delusional. Nora listened with growing horror. You think this thing did something to us? I don't know what I think. Burn it. That's your advice? Yes. She looked at me as if weighing whether I belonged in the psychiatric wing. I leaned closer. You already have a broken arm and a cancer diagnosis. What exactly are you afraid will happen if you destroy a piece of paper? Her fingers tightened. Before she could answer, a car horn sounded outside the entrance. Daniel and Claire were pulling up. Claire waved through the windshield. Mia! Robert closed the contract. We're celebrating. I stared at her. In my first life, Robert's contract had closed on the day I died. This time I was standing here alive. Something had changed. But not enough. I looked back at Nora. She was still holding the charm. Burn it, I said again. Then I went to find out why my family kept getting richer while I stayed alive. Robert chose an expensive private dining room for the celebration. By the time I arrived, my anxiety had turned into something sharper. Observation. I was done accepting explanations because they came from people I loved. I wanted facts. Robert was already pouring wine when I walked in. Daniel sat beside him. Claire was showing everyone a screenshot of her supposed jackpot claim. Aaron and Sophie argued over who had been luckier that week. Then I noticed the red cords. Robert wore one. Daniel wore one. Claire wore one. So did Aaron and Sophie. The same folded charm hung from every neck at the table. I stopped just inside the door. Robert noticed. See? He tapped his charm and laughed. We finally got smart. Claire beamed. I told them mine worked. What do you mean? The charm, she said. The retreat in the hills. We went back yesterday and got one for everyone. Daniel lifted his wine glass. The day I put mine on, the mortgage finally cleared. Robert grinned. Mine goes on, and a contract we've been chasing for 18 months suddenly signs. Sophie unlocked her phone and shoved an email toward me. I got promoted. She had been stuck in the same department for almost 3 years. Aaron, a professional sports player who had spent 2 seasons being eliminated early, said his team had finally reached a major final. Everyone at the table laughed about being blessed. I stared at them. If the charm stole one person's life to enrich everyone else, why were they all wearing them now? Claire reached for my hand. What about yours? I went still. The birthday one. Oh. I put it somewhere safe. Somewhere safe? Her smile did not change. You're supposed to wear it. I didn't want to lose it. Claire reached into her purse. No problem. We brought you another. She placed a folded triangle of yellow paper in my palm. The instant it touched my skin, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. Ms. Hart? Yes? This is Hawthorne Analytics. One of the candidates ahead of you has declined our offer. Your application was next in the final ranking. We'd like to extend the position to you if you're still interested. For several seconds, I forgot where I was. Hawthorne had been my first choice. I had made it through 3 interviews and lost the role by 1 slot. Claire heard enough to understand. She clapped both hands. What did I tell you? Daniel laughed. You've held the charm for 30 seconds and you already got a job. My relatives looked delighted. The paper in my hand suddenly felt filthy. I dropped it. No. The table went quiet. Claire blinked. I pushed my chair back. This doesn't bring good luck. Robert's expression hardened. Mia. You want me to wear it because something happens when I do. Erin scoffed. There she goes. Sophie folded her arms. You're unbelievable. They climbed that mountain for you twice. Daniel looked wounded rather than angry. Mia, we raised you. I know. You think we would hurt you? My throat tightened. That question had haunted me for days. I looked at the people who had taught me to drive, helped me through school, sat in hospital waiting rooms with me. Then I remembered crushed metal. A cancer diagnosis. A planter falling from the sky. And the strange voice telling me my life had been traded. I think something is wrong, I said. Claire's eyes filled. She bent to retrieve the charm. We want you to be happy. That's all. She wiped the paper carefully against her sleeve and held it out again. Wear it. Daniel nodded. Please. Robert said nothing. He didn't need to. The entire room was waiting. My fear broke into anger. I took the charm. Then I asked, you said you'd give me anything? Claire relaxed a fraction. Of course. Fine. Give me Daniel's house. Silence. I looked at Claire. And your $5 million lottery money. Her mouth opened. I turned to Robert. And every dollar of profit from the new contract. Erin pushed back so hard his chair scraped the floor. What the hell is wrong with you? Sophie stared at me. That money isn't yours. I almost smiled. No? Obviously not. Interesting. Claire reached for my arm. Mia, don't turn this into something ugly. I pulled away. You told me you'd give me anything. We meant if you needed something. I need those things. Robert's jaw tightened. Enough. There it was. The limit of unconditional love. I took a lighter from my purse. Claire's face changed. Only for an instant. But I saw it. No, she said. I lit the edge of the charm. Daniel stood. Mia. The paper caught. Claire reached toward it, then stopped when the flame climbed. Robert's face went flat. Not hurt. Not confused. Angry. I held the burning charm over an empty plate until it collapsed into black flakes. Erin cursed at me. Sophie called me spoiled. Daniel said I had humiliated them. Claire cried. Robert told me I needed to remember who had been there when nobody else was. I left. By the time I reached my car, the family group chat had exploded. Cousins. Second cousins. People I had not spoken to in years. Everyone had an opinion. Robert, Daniel, and Claire had sacrificed so much for me. I was ungrateful. I had become arrogant. I owed them an apology. Then Daniel entered the chat. Leave her alone. Mia's upset. She'll come around. His defense made the criticism worse. I left the group. Blocked everyone. Then I booked a hotel under a shortened version of my name and spent the next 3 nights watching the camera feed from my apartment hallway. My relatives came 6 times. Daniel came twice. Claire once. Robert sent Erin. A woman I barely knew left a grocery bag outside my door with a note about family forgiveness. They were not hurt. They were desperate. I just didn't know why. On the 4th night, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I rejected it. It rang again. I answered on the 3rd attempt. Mia? I recognized the voice. Nora? I burned it. I sat upright. What happened? Can we meet? Her apartment was small, clean, and almost completely empty except for medical supplies and moving boxes. Her cast was still on. But she looked better. Color had returned to her face. She locked the door behind me. I did what you said, she began. I burned the charm. And? That night my father lost a huge amount gambling. My skin prickled. He came home furious and asked where my charm was. Not how I felt. Not whether I'd taken my medication. The charm. What did you tell him? That I lost it. He believed you? Not for long. The next morning he brought me another one. Nora opened a drawer. Inside lay a folded charm. I recoiled. She shook her head. It's fake. I made it. You what? I bought similar paper at a craft store and copied the markings. Folded it the same way. My father hasn't noticed. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Smart. He's distracted. My brother got into some kind of trouble at school. Then Nora's expression shifted. There's something else. She handed me a medical report. I read it once. Then again. The cancer diagnosis had been withdrawn. A pathology review had found a specimen identification error. The abnormal tissue had never been hers. Nora did not have cancer. My stomach twisted. So the charm didn't cure you? No. The diagnosis was wrong. Yes. But somebody benefited from you believing you were dying. Nora looked at me. We both understood the same thing at once. The supernatural explanation was becoming convenient. Too convenient. What do your parents gain if you die? I asked. Her face crumpled. I don't know. Insurance? I don't know. Estate? I barely own anything. Then find out. She nodded. What about your family? I'm going to the place where they got the charms. Nora stared. Alone? No. I'm coming. 2 days later, we drove toward the hills. The retreat sat nearly 2 hours outside Greyhaven, beyond a stretch of forest and old quarry roads. I expected something hidden. Instead, hundreds of people were there. Cars filled makeshift lots. Visitors climbed a long set of stone steps toward a low complex built into the hillside. Some stopped every few steps to bow. Others carried flowers. A hand-painted sign near the entrance promised no fees. No donations required. No purchase necessary. That confused me more than anything else. Scams wanted money. This place seemed almost eager not to take it. Halfway up, a woman in her 30s noticed Nora and me walking normally. "You're supposed to pause at each landing," she said. "Sorry," Nora replied quickly. "First time." The woman softened. "You have to mean it. The charm doesn't work if you treat this like a tourist stop." "What are you asking for?" Nora asked. The woman touched her lower abdomen. "A baby." She had been trying for 8 years. A neighbor with the same fertility problems had come here and conceived soon after. "So you came too?" I asked. "Every month for 6 months." "Has it worked?" Pain crossed her face. "Not yet." Something bitter rose in me. "Then maybe it doesn't work." Her expression snapped shut. "You don't understand. It's been 6 months. Faith isn't a vending machine." "I'm not talking about faith. I'm talking about people making medical claims. They don't charge us." I stopped. "What?" "The charms are free." Several people nearby turned toward us. The woman's voice rose. "You came here looking to insult people." "No, she's calling it a scam." Faces turned. Not curious. Hostile. Nora moved closer to me. "Mia." A man farther down the steps said, "If they don't respect the place, send them back." People began closing the distance. Then someone called my name. "Mia?" "Robert." My blood chilled. He was climbing toward us with Daniel, Claire, Aaron, Sophie, and several other relatives. All of them wore red cords. Daniel reached us first. "What are you doing here?" The angry woman immediately complained about me. Robert apologized on my behalf. Claire touched my arm. "I told you. You should have come with us from the beginning." Daniel smiled as if our last confrontation had never happened. "See? You're curious after all." I looked at my family. Then at Nora. Nora's eyes widened slightly. I squeezed her hand twice. A signal. "Thanks for coming with me," I said brightly. "My family's here now. You can head home." She caught on. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." Claire's fingers tightened around my elbow. Nora smiled, said goodbye, and started down the steps. I linked my arm through Claire's. Her body went stiff. Only for a second. Then she patted my hand. "You're still our little girl." I smiled. It felt like swallowing glass. My family bypassed the public line. Nobody stopped them. That mattered. Inside, a man in plain clothes took one look at me and handed Claire a folded charm. No prayer. No questions. No blessing. Nothing personal. Just paper. Claire looped a red cord through it and tied it around my neck herself. "There." She brushed my hair back. "This one stays on." I nodded. She looked relieved. A little too relieved. Then Daniel said, "You can head home now." "What about you?" "We have something to discuss." "With who?" Robert gave me the look that used to make me stop asking questions as a child. Family business. They led me toward the exit. I went willingly. Because Nora was waiting at the bottom of the hill. And because before leaving, I had activated the camera on my phone. We drove straight to the Greyhaven Police Department. I expected skepticism. Instead, once Nora mentioned a possible falsified cancer diagnosis, a suspicious insurance issue she had uncovered in her family records, and my relatives' repeated attempts to force a specific object onto me, the desk officer called a detective. We told the story again. This time without charms having magical powers. We focused on behavior. Sudden money. Pressure. Medical records. Financial incentives. The family's connection to the retreat. The fact that they had special access. The officer did not raid the hilltop because two frightened women had a theory. That would have been absurd. Instead, detectives took copies of our documentation. They asked Nora for written permission to inspect the insurance paperwork she had found. They advised both of us not to confront anyone. They contacted the Financial Crimes Unit. And they asked whether I could document future contact. I could. For the next 6 days, I did nothing dramatic. I went to work. I stayed in the hotel. I preserved messages. Nora quietly obtained copies of her insurance records. Her parents had purchased several accidental death policies on her. Her younger brother was listed as beneficiary through a family trust they controlled. The combined payout was enormous. More importantly, one of the policies had been taken out shortly before her accidents began. That was enough to turn suspicion into a real investigation. My case was stranger. I had no obvious insurance policy. No known trust. No large assets. At least none I knew about. Detectives started looking anyway. On the 7th day, Claire called from a new number. Mia, honey. We're worried. I'm fine. You disappeared. I'm working. You still wearing the charm? There it was. Not are you sleeping? Not are you safe? Not are you angry? The charm. I looked at the fake one Nora had helped me make. Yes. Claire exhaled. Good. What does it actually do? A pause. Then a laugh. Brings luck. We've been over this. Whose? The line went quiet. Mia. Yes? You need to stop thinking everyone is against you. I smiled without humor. I'm trying. She softened. Come to Daniel's on Sunday. Why? Family dinner. The same invitation that had preceded the crash in my first life. My skin turned cold. What time? 6. I'll be there. I ended the call and called the detective. After that, things moved quickly. Not recklessly. Quickly. Financial investigators found that Daniel's house had not been purchased with retirement savings. The down payment came through a private holding company. The holding company traced to a fiduciary account. The account was associated with an estate created by my parents. My parents. I sat across from Detective Mara Voss in a windowless interview room while she slid a copy of a trust summary toward me. What is this? Your parents' estate plan. I don't have a trust. Yes, you do. The room went silent. My parents had left far more than anyone ever told me. Life insurance. Business interests. Property. Investment accounts. After debts and taxes, the assets had been placed into a protected trust for me. The trust was designed to pay for my education, housing, health, and general support while I was young. At 30, or upon certain qualifying life events, control would pass to me directly. Marriage was one of those events. If I died before full distribution, unmarried and without descendants, the remaining funds would pass into family sub-trusts benefiting the relatives my parents had named as backup heirs. Robert. Daniel. Claire. They had seemed like reasonable choices when my parents were alive. They were family. They were trusted. They were also the people who later raised me. What does this have to do with Daniel's house? I asked. Detective Voss tapped several transactions. Your relatives had influence over discretionary requests through a family advisory committee. They could not simply withdraw your principal. But with help from a compromised fiduciary administrator, they submitted falsified expenses and routed money through related entities. My stomach turned. Claire's lottery win. Not a lottery win. A disguised distribution passed through shell accounts, then presented publicly as gambling proceeds. Robert's contract. A sham transaction funded by another entity linked to the trust. Daniel's house. Bought with money that was mine. And the charms? I whispered. Voss leaned back. The retreat appears to be part confidence scheme, part criminal brokerage operation. The paper is meaningless. A laugh escaped me. It sounded broken. Meaningless. The people running the operation attract people who are desperate for money, luck, fertility, legal problems, family disputes. Most visitors are harmless believers. A smaller group gets identified privately. Identified for what? For opportunities. I already knew. Still, hearing it made my stomach twist. Voss continued carefully. People with vulnerable relatives. Insurance policies. Inheritances. Guardianship arrangements. Business disputes. People who might benefit financially from someone else's death. Nora sat beside me. Her good hand found mine. They make it look supernatural, she said. Sometimes, Voss replied. More often, they use superstition as psychological cover. It gives clients a story they can tell themselves. If the target gets hurt, they call it fate. If money arrives, they call it luck. The voice I had heard after death returned to me. Life traded for money. Burn what they gave you. The voice had been wrong about the mechanism. But not about the danger. What were they planning for me? Voss did not answer immediately. That frightened me more than if she had. Your relatives knew you had started a serious relationship earlier this year. I stared at her. So? If you married before they could drain the trust or before the remainder provision could benefit them, control of the assets would shift. My hands started shaking. They needed me dead before I married. That is what the evidence is beginning to suggest. I heard the truck again in my head. Metal folding. Bones breaking. The planter. Cancer. Wait. The cancer. Voss frowned. In your prior. I stopped. I could not tell her about another life. I changed the sentence. I mean Nora's cancer result. Nora swallowed. Lab error. Yes, Voss said. We are still examining whether it was an ordinary error or deliberate manipulation. And my relatives? We have enough for warrants on several financial offenses. We're building the conspiracy case. Are they going to try again Sunday? We don't know. I looked down at the trust papers. For years I had believed Robert, Daniel, and Claire raised me out of love. Maybe they had. That was almost worse. Because if they had loved me once, then greed had not replaced strangers. It had replaced family. Sunday never became a family dinner. Before noon, police executed coordinated warrants at the retreat, the fiduciary office, and several homes. The hilltop compound contained no mystical artifacts. It contained spreadsheets, insurance information, family trees, debt records, photographs, schedules, copies of wills, and files on people, including me, including Nora, including a note beside my name. Distribution event approaching. Resolution required. I read those words only once. Once was enough. Robert, Daniel, Claire, several cousins, Nora's parents, the compromised administrator, and multiple organizers connected to the retreat were arrested over the following days. The charges were not magical. Conspiracy. Fraud. Attempted murder. Insurance fraud. Financial exploitation. Identity theft. Solicitation. Obstruction. The truth was uglier than a curse because every piece of it had been done by human hands. When police brought my relatives through the corridor after an interview, Robert saw me first. His face changed. You. Daniel looked nothing like the man who had dragged me away from that reversing car. Claire's eyes were dry. Aaron cursed. Sophie called me a traitor. Robert stopped long enough to spit out, "We raised you for 20 years. The officer beside him pulled him forward. Daniel's voice cut through the hall. Ungrateful girl. Do you know what we gave up for you? I stood beside Nora. For a second I was 7 years old again. Robert tying my shoelaces. Daniel buying me ice cream after a dentist appointment. Claire sitting beside me at my first school recital. Maybe those moments had been real. Maybe the people who loved me then had slowly become the people standing in handcuffs now. Both things could be true. That was the lesson I hated most. Someone can love you once and still choose to destroy you later. I cried after they were gone. Not because I wanted them released. Not because I doubted what I had done. I cried because some betrayals hurt precisely because there had once been something worth betraying. Nora took my hand. We walked the opposite direction. And for the first time in 2 lives, nobody from my family followed. The case took more than a year to resolve. The public version was simple enough to fit into headlines. A fraud network used a good luck retreat to recruit desperate clients and conceal financial crimes. The real version filled boxes. My parents' trust had to be reconstructed transaction by transaction. Some money was recovered quickly. Some was tied up in property. Some had been pushed through shell companies that existed only on paper. Some would never come back. Daniel's house was seized. Claire's lottery winnings turned out to be a staged story built around a series of transfers and a fabricated claim packet. Robert's giant contract collapsed the moment investigators looked through the other side of the deal. Aaron and Sophie had known more than they admitted. They had not designed the scheme, but messages showed they understood that family money was being taken from Mia's account and that something had to happen before I gained control. That hurt too. I had spent years treating them like siblings. Their resentment had always been obvious. They thought the adults gave me too much attention because I was orphaned. Apparently, resentment becomes easier to justify when there is money attached. Nora's case was cleaner. Her parents had taken out multiple accidental death policies, concealed the total coverage from her, and created a beneficiary arrangement that would ultimately benefit her brother. Her staircase fall was not an accident. A loose tread had been tampered with. The cancer report was a separate nightmare. Investigators found no evidence her parents caused the laboratory mix-up, which meant the universe had supplied the most horrifying coincidence possible at exactly the moment their scheme needed it. That mattered to me. Not every bad thing had been arranged. Not every coincidence was a plot. At the time, I thought I understood that lesson. I didn't. Not yet. The people arrested from the retreat eventually received long sentences. My relatives faced additional financial penalties and restitution orders. The compromised fiduciary lost his license and went to prison. The trust was moved to an independent institutional administrator with court supervision until I reached the distribution date. I asked for every document. Every statement. Every beneficiary provision. Every amendment. Every insurance policy connected to me. I read until numbers blurred. Then I read again. I stopped wearing necklaces. Stopped accepting gifts that came in sealed packaging. Stopped drinking anything I had not opened myself. I changed apartments twice. I installed cameras. I wrote down license plates. When a car followed me through 3 turns, I called the police. When someone sent flowers without a card, I threw them away outside. I told myself I was being careful. And after what had happened, nobody could tell me I was wrong. Nora understood. For a while, she was worse. She would not drink water her father had once touched. She slept with a chair under her doorknob even after moving to a new address. She checked her credit report every morning. She kept copies of her insurance records in 3 places. We never judged each other. We were alive. That seemed like proof our habits worked. 2 years passed. I got the job at Hawthorne Analytics after all. The offer had not come from a charm. A candidate had genuinely withdrawn, and I had genuinely been next in line. That ordinary explanation meant more to me than magic ever could. I worked hard. I was promoted. I made friends who knew nothing about my family except that there had been a legal mess. I started therapy, stopped therapy, started again. I dated carefully. Then I met Ethan Cole. He was not dramatic. That was one of the first things I liked about him. He never showed up at my apartment unannounced. If I said I needed a quiet night, he said okay. If I did not answer a message for 3 hours, he did not ask where I had been. When I told him I did not like surprise gifts, he stopped giving them. For our first birthday together, he sent me a text. I found a bookstore voucher I think you'd like. Want it, or would you rather pick something yourself? I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Then I cried. He thought he had done something wrong. He had not. He had asked. That was all. By the time he proposed, I knew enough about his finances to know he had his own stable career and more than enough income to support himself. I also knew enough about myself to know that love did not cancel paperwork. Before the wedding, I suggested a prenuptial agreement. He said, "Good." I blinked. Good? We should both know what belongs to who before we start mixing things. You're not offended? Why would I be offended by clarity? He hired his own lawyer. I hired mine. We exchanged complete financial disclosures. I disclosed the existence of inherited assets but not the full amount of the trust because, at that stage, I was not required to and emotionally could not make myself do it. Ethan did not push. His lawyer drafted language preserving my premarital property and inherited assets as separate. Ethan added a clause preserving his retirement accounts and ownership interest in the consulting firm he had co-founded. When we signed, he tapped the two folders. Yours is yours. Mine is mine. What we build together starts after. I went home and cried in the shower. Not because I was afraid. Because for the first time, a legal boundary felt like affection instead of war. We married in a small ceremony. No huge ballroom. No spectacle. Nora stood beside me. When the trust's distribution provision activated, the administrator gave me full reporting and control over the portion my parents had intended for me. I had known it was large. I had not understood how large. Even after years of theft and recovery costs, the amount was enough to change several generations of lives. I stared at the final number until the lawyer asked whether I needed a break. I'm fine. I wasn't. Half of me wanted to give it all away. The other half wanted to put it somewhere nobody, including Ethan, could ever find it. I eventually donated a substantial portion through a professionally managed foundation focused on victims of financial exploitation and domestic coercion. The rest went into diversified accounts and protected structures. Ethan knew I had inherited money. He never knew the exact figure. I never told him. He never asked. We bought a house together using income we had earned during the marriage. We split the down payment based on a written agreement. Years later, we had a child. A loud, curious boy who thought socks were optional and every cardboard box was a vehicle. For 5 years, my marriage looked calm. From the outside, it was. From the inside, I had simply gotten better at hiding how afraid I still was. I kept a private safe. Inside were copies of my will, bank records, insurance schedules, property documents, and a letter to Nora. Every year, I replaced the letter. If I die unexpectedly, contact law enforcement. Do not accept a quick explanation. Preserve food, medication, digital records, and anything I consumed in the previous 24 hours. Investigate anyone who benefits financially from my death. My husband. My child's guardians. Business partners. Anyone. I thought this was intelligent. Responsible. Necessary. Then, on the 5th year of my marriage, I drank a glass of milk before bed. At 1 a.m, I woke with pain so violent I could not breathe. It tore through the right side of my abdomen and folded me in half. Sweat soaked my shirt. Beside me, Ethan woke instantly. Mia? He reached toward me. I flinched away so hard I nearly fell from the bed. The room went silent. Another wave of pain hit. Ethan's face changed. Where does it hurt? I could not answer. My eyes had locked on the empty glass beside the bed. He had brought me the milk. Not because I asked. Because I had been working late and he knew I sometimes forgot to eat. A perfectly ordinary act. My mind did not see that. It saw a truck. A cancer ward. A falling planter. Robert's face behind a police officer. Ungrateful girl. We raised you. I grabbed Ethan's wrist. Don't touch the glass. He stared at me. What? Don't wash it. Mia, leave it exactly where it is. He looked from me to the glass. For 1 second, hurt crossed his face. Then he crouched and pulled a sweatshirt around my shoulders. Okay. He called emergency services. While we waited, I messaged Nora. Or I thought I messaged her. Pain had made my hands useless. I apparently sent a voice recording. Come to the hospital. If something happens to me, preserve what I drank. Call police. Start with Ethan. I do not remember saying his name. I remember waking in a hospital room after sunrise. My abdomen hurt. A nurse adjusted my fore. Easy. Surgery went well. Surgery? Appendicitis. Your appendix was badly inflamed, but you came in before it ruptured. I stared at her. Was I poisoned? She looked confused. No. Your toxicology screening was negative. My heart stopped. I turned toward the small sitting area. Nora was there. Alone. Where's Ethan? Nora did not answer immediately. That frightened me. Where is he? He went home. Why? She looked exhausted. Mia, last night you told him to put the glass in an evidence bag. My fingers curled around the blanket. I what? You sent me a voice message. He heard it. I closed my eyes. Nora continued quietly. You said if you died, I should call police immediately. I already knew the next part. You told me to investigate him first. The room seemed to shrink. What did he say? Nothing. That was worse. He stayed until the surgeon came out, Nora said. He waited until they said you were stable. Then he sat in the hallway for almost 2 hours. Did he ask about the trust? Nora's expression tightened. No. The will? No. Anything? No, Mia. She looked at me for a long time. He just looked tired. I turned my face toward the window. For 5 years, Ethan had never asked how much I had. He had signed an agreement waiving claims to my premarital assets. He had never entered my safe. Never opened my mail. Never asked for my passwords. Never once suggested I should put his name on inherited accounts. And the moment I believed I might die, I had looked at the man who loved me and seen a murderer. Ethan picked me up when I was discharged. He carried my bag. Adjusted the passenger seat. Helped me buckle in because twisting hurt. He said almost nothing. At home, I noticed his pillow was gone. So were his sleep clothes. His laptop charger. The half-finished novel from his nightstand. Everything had been moved to the study. My panic came faster than logic. Ethan. He stopped folding a shirt. Yes? What is this? You need space while you recover. That's not what I asked. I move around in my sleep. I don't want to hit your incision. He spoke gently. Too gently. That evening he made soup. When he placed the bowl in front of me, his hand stopped. Then he lifted the spoon. Took a bite. Swallowed. Only then did he push it toward me. The surgeon said bland food for a few days. I stared at the soup. He had tasted it first. To prove it was safe. Heat rushed into my face. He was not punishing me loudly. He did not have to. I could see exactly what I had done. I'm not hungry. He nodded. Okay. The next morning, he placed a folder beside my coffee. I opened it. Property schedule. Retirement accounts. Investments. Insurance. Business ownership. Projected income rights. Everything he owned was listed. The last page contained a proposed postnuptial property agreement. He would waive any claim he might otherwise have to my premarital or inherited property beyond what our existing agreement already protected. I looked up. What is this? I spoke to a lawyer. Why? So you don't have to wonder. I don't want this. I pushed the folder back. He did not take it. Mia. His voice was calm. I'm not angry because you never told me how much money you inherited. My eyes filled. I don't care how much it is. Ethan, what hurts is that you think I could kill you for it. The sentence landed harder than anything he could have shouted. I didn't. I stopped. Because I had. His jaw tightened. If last night hadn't been appendicitis, what would you have done? I could not answer. If you had actually died, would Nora have gone to the police with a recording telling them to start with me? Tears blurred the room. Yes. He nodded once. What if I got sick tomorrow? I wiped my face. What? What if I had a seizure? What if I fell down the stairs? What if my brakes failed? His voice cracked. Would I tell the police to investigate you first? No. Why not? Because I would never hurt you. He closed his eyes. Exactly. I had no defense. He opened them again. You know you wouldn't hurt me. His eyes were wet now. But after 5 years, you still don't know whether I would hurt you. I cried. He did not come around the table to hold me. That was the moment I understood how deep the wound went. For the next 2 weeks, we lived inside a transparent wall. Ethan still took our son to school. Still remembered my follow-up appointment. Still changed the bandage when I could not comfortably reach it. Still made dinner. But he stopped touching me unless necessary. No hand at my lower back when he passed behind me. No kiss before work. No absent-minded tug bringing me closer on the couch. One evening, our son drew a picture. 3 stick figures stood beneath a yellow sun. Me. Ethan. Him. Between Ethan and me, he had drawn a long blue river. Mom? Yes? Are you and Dad mad? No. Then why does Dad sleep in the office? I swallowed. He's helping me heal. Our son frowned at his drawing. Dad cried yesterday. My head snapped up. When? After you were asleep. Where? On the couch. I came out for water. I sat very still. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened the safe. The papers inside smelled faintly of metal and old ink. My will. Asset schedule. Insurance policies. Passwords. Emergency contacts. And the letter to Nora. I unfolded it. Investigate my husband. Investigate anyone who receives money if I die. Do not trust an accidental death determination without independent review. I had written those sentences so many times they no longer looked extreme. They looked organized, professional, safe. For the first time, I imagined Ethan reading them after my death. Imagine loving someone for years, building a home, raising a child, making soup, signing legal waivers, sleeping beside her. Then discovering that, beneath all of it, she had kept a permanent instruction telling the world that you might be her killer. I sat on the floor beside the safe until morning. Robert and Daniel had been in prison for years. Claire was gone from my life. The retreat had been dismantled. The paper charm had burned to ash. Yet I was still living in the night I died. I had stopped wearing the charm around my neck. I had replaced it with something invisible. Suspicion. It had protected me. It had also made intimacy almost impossible. The next day, I met Nora. We sat in a quiet cafe where both of us could see the entrance. Old habits. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stirred her tea. I've wanted to say something for a long time. What? Do you remember when we met? You wouldn't drink from the hospital water fountain. I wouldn't drink anything my father could have touched. She smiled sadly. It took me almost a year to eat at someone else's house. I knew. We had celebrated the first time she accepted coffee from a coworker without watching it being made. Mia, what happened to us was real. I looked down. Being careful isn't wrong. Having legal boundaries isn't wrong. Keeping your own money isn't wrong. She reached across the table. But we didn't escape one prison so we could build another one somewhere nicer. My tears came before I could stop them. Nora squeezed my hand. You don't have to trust everyone. I know. You don't have to trust blindly. I know. But you can't pre-convict every person who loves you. That one hurt. Because she was right. And being right did not make changing easy. That evening, I stood outside the study for almost a minute before knocking. Ethan looked up from his laptop. His first reaction was concern. Is your incision hurting? I shook my head. Then I placed the contents of my safe on his desk. His eyes moved over the documents. He did not touch them. You don't have to show me. I do. No, you don't. I need to. My voice trembled. There's something I never told you. He leaned back. I had rehearsed the story hundreds of times in my head. No version sounded sane. So I stopped trying to sound sane. I died once. Ethan's expression went completely still. I told him everything. The first life. The truck. The wheelchair. The cancer diagnosis. The planter. The voice in the dark. Waking up. Burning the charm. Meeting Nora. Finding the retreat. Learning about the trust. Putting the people who raised me in prison. I told him what it felt like to hear Daniel call me ungrateful after I discovered he had been helping plan my death. I told him I had spent years believing danger always wore a familiar face. Ethan did not interrupt. Not once. When I finished, I stared at my hands. You think I'm insane? He said nothing. A few seconds passed. Then his hand covered mine. I looked up. His eyes were red. Did it hurt? 2 words. That was all. Something inside me broke open. Yes. My voice cracked. The truck hurt. I started crying. The cancer treatment hurt. His thumb moved across my knuckles. The planter happened too fast. I barely understood it. I could not breathe properly anymore. I was so scared when I died. Ethan came around the desk. This time, when he opened his arms, I moved into them. I held his shirt with both fists and cried harder than I had after the arrests. 2 lives of fear came out of me all at once. He did not ask how much the inheritance was. He did not ask whether the story could be proved. He did not ask what happened to the money. He held me. And when I finally stopped shaking, he said, "I'm sorry you were alone." I had not known how badly I needed to hear that. The next morning, I asked Ethan to come with me to the cemetery. He had never been. That was my fault. During our marriage, I visited my parents alone. I had told myself it was private. Sacred. Something that belonged only to me. Standing at their graves with Ethan beside me, I finally understood what I had actually been doing. I had kept my past in one locked room and my marriage in another. I had never allowed the doors between them to open. I placed flowers beneath the stone. Mom. Dad. My voice sounded strange. This is Ethan. He cleared his throat. Then, quietly, "Hi." I looked at him. His ears turned red. He tried again. Mom. Dad. I guess this is our first official introduction. A laugh escaped me through tears. "I'm late," he added. "Sorry about that." The wind moved through the trees. For a second, I thought of the voice I had heard after death. "Burn it if you want to live." Nothing spoke now. No warning. No prophecy. Just leaves. I crouched and touched my mother's name. "You don't have to worry about me anymore." Ethan stood behind me. "I'm doing okay." For the first time, I believed it. We rewrote our estate plans. Not because I had become reckless. I did not dump every dollar into a joint account. I did not hand Ethan all my passwords. Trust did not require self-erasure. My inherited assets remained separate. His remained his. We created an independent trust for our son with a professional trustee and clear safeguards. We appointed backup guardians who would not directly control his money. We reviewed life insurance with our attorneys. We documented medical directives. We gave each other appropriate access to emergency information without collapsing every boundary between us. I still kept an emergency file. The difference was in the language. Preserve evidence if circumstances are suspicious. Request independent review when warranted. Contact counsel. Contact law enforcement if there is actual reason for concern. I removed the line that had been there for years. Investigate my husband. When I deleted it, I sat back and breathed. Ethan was reading on the couch. I nudged his foot. "You really don't want to know?" "Know what?" "How much?" He did not look up. "No." "It's a lot." "Congratulations." I narrowed my eyes. A lot. That got his attention. "How many houses?" "A lot of houses." He closed his book. "Enough for me to quit my job tomorrow?" "Yes." He slapped the cover shut. Excellent. I'm resigning. I stared at him. He lasted 2 seconds before smiling. Kidding. I threw a pillow. Ethan. He caught it. Our son came charging into the room barefoot. Mom attacked Dad. Call the authorities, Ethan said solemnly. Our son jumped onto him. I'll save you. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. A year later, Nora got engaged. The night before her wedding, she called me. Mia. One word was enough. You want to run? A silence. Maybe. Okay. What? Run to my house. Another pause. You're serious? Completely. Bring your financial statements, insurance declarations, identification, prenup, beneficiary forms, and every document making you nervous. Nora started laughing. You are the least romantic person I know. Staying alive is romantic. That does not even make sense. It makes sense to us. She came over. We sat on my living room floor the way we had sat in her apartment years earlier. Back then, we had been two terrified women comparing paper charms. Now we compared legal documents. Her fiancé arrived with takeout and his own folder. He had no problem with the review. In fact, he had already made copies. Ethan sat across the room building a model spaceship with our son. At midnight, Nora signed the last acknowledgement from her attorney and leaned back against the couch. Mia. Yeah. We actually made it. I stopped moving. The room was warm. Our son was half asleep against Ethan's shoulder. Nora's fiancé was cutting fruit in the kitchen. No red cords. No sudden jackpots. No miracle house. No one getting rich because someone else got hurt. Just paperwork, food, tired people, and a child who had somehow lost one sock. My throat tightened. Yeah. Nora smiled. We made it. I cried more than she did at the wedding. When she came by our table, she laughed. People are going to think you're my mother. Go away. Ethan slipped his hand into mine beneath the table. Years earlier, I would have noticed the gesture and then wondered what he wanted. That night, I simply held on. Our son fell asleep in the back seat during the drive home. Streetlights moved across his face. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel. After a long silence, he asked, if you could go all the way back again, what would you do differently? I looked out the window. I'd still burn the charm. He nodded. I'd still go to the police. Good. I'd still testify. Good. I would never forgive my relatives just because they raised me. He glanced at me. Also good. I smiled. And I would still keep my own assets protected. Extremely good. I laughed. He waited. There's more. I watched the road. The charm had once made me believe fortune could be transferred like blood. One person got a mansion. Someone else lost her legs. One person got millions. Someone else got cancer. One company landed a huge contract. Someone else had to die. Then I learned there had never been a mystical exchange. The thing that killed me was greed. Ordinary, human greed. But surviving taught me something harder. Greed was not the only thing that could ruin a life. Fear could do it too. Not the fear that warns you when something is wrong. That fear had saved me. The dangerous kind was fear that kept living after the danger was gone. Fear that treated every gift like bait. Every accident like a plot. Every person like a future betrayer. I turned toward Ethan. I'd tell you sooner. Tell me what? I let the pause stretch. That I'm ridiculously rich. He blinked. That? That's your reaction? What reaction do you want? I don't know. Shock? He considered. Mrs. Cole, if you transfer me some spending money, I can perform a more convincing emotional response. Absolutely not. Worth trying. I rolled my eyes. He laughed. So did I. The car moved steadily through the dark. No truck ran the light. No planter fell. No one was waiting somewhere to calculate what my death might be worth. Our sun slept. The road ahead stayed bright. That night, I dreamed about my parents. They stood far away, young in the way I remembered them from old photographs. My mother waved. My father smiled. I ran toward them. For a while, they waited. Then they turned and began walking away. Panic seized me. Mom. They kept moving. Dad. My mother looked back. Her lips moved. I heard nothing. But I understood. Go back. I stopped. When I turned around, Ethan and our son stood behind me in bright sunlight. My son held out both arms. For once, I did not chase the dead. I walked toward the living. I woke with my pillow wet. Ethan was asleep beside me. I watched him for a while. Eventually, as if he felt me staring, he reached out without opening his eyes and pulled me against him. What time is it? Early. Then go back to sleep. I rested my cheek against his chest. His heartbeat was slow. Steady. For the first time in 2 lives, I did not immediately think about insurance. I did not calculate who inherited what if I died before breakfast. I did not inventory the room for anything that could become evidence. I thought about pancakes. School pickup. Dinner with Nora. Visiting my parents on Sunday. Ordinary things. The kind of future I used to assume could disappear at any second. Maybe it still could. No life came with a guarantee. That was not the same as being hunted. I closed my eyes. For years, I had believed survival meant refusing everything another person could use to reach me. Money. Gifts. Secrets. Trust. I had been wrong. The charm was never the true danger. The people who wanted to profit from my death were. And after they were gone, the fear they left behind tried to finish what they started. I had burned the paper years ago. It took much longer to burn the terror out of my life. I never became naive. I still read contracts. I still kept separate property separate. I still checked insurance beneficiaries. I still believed important decisions deserved documents, witnesses, and independent advice. But now I understood the difference between a boundary and a wall. A boundary has a gate. You decide who enters. A wall lets nobody in at all. Ethan's arm tightened around me. Down the hall, our son coughed once and rolled over. Morning waited beyond the curtains. I was alive. Not borrowed time. Not stolen time. Mine. There would be breakfast after I got up. There would be errands in the afternoon. There would be another argument with Ethan about whether our son needed one more box of toy cars. There would be birthdays. Bills. Vacations. Bad days. Good days. Years. All those ordinary years I had once been certain someone could take from me. They belonged to me now. And this time, I intended to live every one of them.